Thank you very much.
The meeting is being recorded now.
Right.
And live streamed. It has been live streamed.
And we've gone live on social media, so you are also on YouTube and on Facebook.
Thank you.
We're ready to go. Daniel?
Chief, go.
Good evening to you all. His Royal Majesties, His Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. We're all aware or know the reasons why we are here tonight, to give our best to the Ijaw nation. The pilot group has invited us this evening to discuss about the challenges of Ijaw nation, particularly at this critical point of our history. We are about
the pilot, not the show.
At this critical part of our history, we are about electing a group of people to lead Ijaw nation towards total emancipation of Ijaw land. And before we go on to proceed at this meeting, I would like to share some of the rules which pilot our hosts have decided that we must keep to in order to drive the mission and the objective of this meeting. And one of which our former president of IYC, Ijaw Kroma, have just highlighted. As you join this meeting, please sign on with your name and of course, use the video so that we can see your face. We need to put faces to the names that we see online. So we're very happy if you could do that. You are an Ijaw son, you are an Ijaw lady. So we must not be shy of introducing ourselves to one another. And the second thing is that today, we shall be hearing from 10 illustrious Ijaw sons to discuss some of the issues that are of critical importance to us as we march towards a nationhood, nation building. And those 10 members will make presentation suggesting solutions. I must repeat, the presentation is going to be solution-based. We are not entering into any lecture series where people have to spend time to discuss theories, but we need to hear practical application of the solutions in Ijaw land, particularly with regard to what we will achieve in the forthcoming INC elections. And each of the presenters are given 10 minutes slot. 10 minutes slot, nothing more, nothing less. Because time has an opportunity cost. Time is important to every one of you. So we need to manage the time as professionals. Professionals. So 10 minutes slot for each presenter. And remember, I didn't go along with all the long introductions that we normally lumber ourselves with in each organizations, recognitions and all that stuff. I hope you pardon us and the organizer of this conference. That does not mean to say that we don't recognize your persons. That does not mean that we don't appreciate you. When we organize social events where we need to recognize people, we will do so without fear. So bear with us. This is strictly business. And one other thing, as you enter this room, there's something flashing on the screen. If you have any questions to ask the panelists, please type it and forward it to us. And of course, your questions will be answered. After we've dealt with that round of questions, before we look at questions being thrown at the panelists by audience that did not comply with what I've just said. And remember what we are doing here, we are not making rules for the ELECO. We are not making rules for the ELECO. ELECO has already published their guidelines. What we are doing here is to provide solutions. The value we can add to what the requirements of INC Constitution is all about. We are here to give the ELECO a supporting hand with ideas and solutions to see whether they can have a buy-in and use that as a vehicle to enhance what they are required to do on behalf of every Ijaw son and daughter from Akwa Ibom to Arigbo in the West. That is our calling, that's our responsibility. So let none of us here present go out of this meeting to make up stories that we are trying to impose. We are trying to lecture ELECO on what to do. We are just trying to add value so that their work will be very successful to the liking and to the excitement of all Ijaw sons and daughters, irrespective of the clans they belong to. I will say to you, that is all for now. And right now, we need to hear the coordinator of this program to give us the first address. Thank you. And the coordinator is Chief, His Royal Highness, Chief Ayakome Whiskey.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good evening, fellow Ijaw brothers and sisters. As been mentioned, my name's Ayakome Whiskey. I have been part of the Ijaw movement for quite some time, spanning over 40 years. So the main issue here, the pilot is an acronym for the full name, which is Patriotic Ijaw Leaders of Thought. And this body came into existence in 2019, but we activated it for full operations only on Monday, 15th March, 2021. And the purpose for bringing it to life at this critical time is to provide a platform that is mainly Ijaw-centric in order to pool the abundant resources, which are not limited to talent, skills, and the very bright, intelligent Ijaw people, for the overall interest of deepening the growth and development of the Ijaw nation in all material aspects, including leadership, human capacity building, economic development, and deepening our social cultural values. Of late, the pilots became very particularly disturbed, like every one of us present here, by the happenings in our country and the seeming lack of voice of our beloved Ijaw nation. Whereas in the past, we used to take the lead, but today we are seemingly voiceless in the community of ethnic nations. And that observation puts the quest for a viral, resilient, visionary, and proactive Ijaw leadership at the front burner. Most of us here were practical witnesses to the very unsavory experiences of the Ijaw nation in 2019, when we had our botched elections. And now that the Ijaw nation is on the march again to conduct another elections, the pilot considered it very expedient to interrogate the processes. And on account of that, liaised with both the leadership of the C3, which is the Committee of Traditional Rulers of the Ijaw nation, the only organ that people belong to without election, as provided for in the INC Constitution, and the organ to which the present INC ELECO is responsible to, and also members of the ELECO, for them to see the need for this kind of a discourse, so that we can sift veritable inputs from members. Like what Elder Roland has said in his intro, we are not here to lecture INC ELECO, neither are we here to lecture the C3. But having observed the guidelines, what additional safeguards can the Ijaw people bring to secure the entire electoral process, so that the outcome of this election being conducted will become very credible, will serve the overall interest of the Ijaw nation. That indeed is the primary purpose of this meeting. Therefore, I appeal to everybody here to be very constructive in our suggestions, to be very constructive in our opinions. Let us be forward-looking and put the past beyond us, because you can't reinvent the past. Use the lessons of the past as veritable, as a worthy process to excavate solutions with which the ELECO can work with, so that the final outcome of the election scheduled for later this month will be something every Ijaw son and daughter should be very proud of. There are people to speak. I'm not one of the panelists. So I'd like to end my interrogation on that, and to welcome everybody here, and to wish the Ijaw nation the best of very productive deliberations. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, and you're welcome.
Thank you very much, His Highness Whiskey. Without wasting too much of your time, the next speaker here, who is going to share the whole of this process, is no other person but His Excellency Ambassador Bolade Igale. I am aware that His Excellency is already in the room. So can I call upon His Excellency Ambassador Igale to please give us his opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Thank you very much.
Sir. Very well. Right,
Thank you very much,
loud and clear.
ladies and gentlemen. I want to appreciate you all for finding time to devote this Saturday evening or afternoon, as the case may be for some of us, to this meeting. I would like to underline the fact that no other time than now in the history of the Ijaw nation has it been important for us to have a credible elected executive of our ethnic nationality. I am the secretary of the board of trustees of the Pan Niger Delta Forum, and I chair the strategy committee of Southern Nigeria and Middle Belt Forum, which are conglomeration of different ethnic nationalities. And I realize that this fora cannot be the alternative voice for the Ijaw people. The Ijaw people as a group must have a voice of its own. So this election is very important for us. And this effort is in no way to impinge on the respected personage that make up the electoral electo. Professor Dagogo Fubara is one of our most celebrated professors, emeritus, and we know that he and his members will do a good job. I believe this is part of confidence building for them and to strengthen them. I want to plead with everybody, make your interventions very short, make your interventions direct to the point, don't repeat what others have said, so that we can be able to allow as many people as possible to bear their minds. Secondly, please don't try to insinuate what does not exist. Let us be factual. Let us be, as much as possible, be very civil and respectful of each other. So I thank you once more, and I would like to invite the moderator to begin to call the various panels to speak. And please, moderator, make sure that panelists keep to time. Timing is very important. Thank you very much. I welcome everybody.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for the brief and precise words of wisdom. I'm sure the speakers are well aware of what we're about to do. Thank you very much. Thank you for those wonderful key things you pointed out. So without wasting too much of your time, for this first panelist for tonight, I would like to introduce Chief Danzo Amagba Kentebe and Ambassador Joel Bissina. They will be talking to us about the funding of INC Electoral Committee. We've had the Chairman of Education telling us that we need to be very precise, factual, ideas-based, brief, to drive a point. So over to you, to the two great Ijaw sons, Chief Kentebe and Ambassador Bissina. Over to you. Let's hear your views on that subject, funding the INC Electoral Committee.
Which one of us goes first?
Chief Kentebe is on.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Good evening to those that it's evening for. I'm glad to be here. We don't have to go into the history of the INC and what its goals and objectives have been. But the issue, to go straight to the point that I am meant to speak on, is about the funding for the Ijaw National Congress. As we know, our membership is eligible to all Ijaw sons and daughters by birth. That makes you automatically a member of the Ijaw National Congress. It's also open to those that have naturalized and those that are married to Ijaw men. Any man married to an Ijaw woman is exempted from being a member of the Ijaw National Congress by the 1990 Constitution. To go further, apart from that criteria, we also have participating members of Congress being labeled as those who have paid their membership fees and also their annual subscription, as will be indicated from time to time by Congress. And these people, after doing these two things, which leads to funding, can participate in the organs of Congress. That means you can vote and you can be voted for. Thereby, this assures us that funding has been seen as a critical part of our own Ijaw National Congress in building up and maintaining its dignity, its independence, and its unity, because that's one of the key things that INC was founded for, to bring unity to all Ijaws. Okay, having said that, as a goal of my intervention on this discussion, I have proposed a more sustainable, independent, and transparent, responsive, public, accountable system of raising and managing potential challenges that can occur from the current culture that we have, which is that the Bayelsa state government or other governments, other Ijaw governments, in this instance, we have only Bayelsa State, has had the sole responsibility of funding the INC and its elections. Now, this has positives and negatives. Positive in the sense that the funds in government hands are our own funds. It's funds of the people that has been placed in trust with those that are in government. So we can look at it and say, this is our money. And if it's being used for the sake of Ijaw Nation properly, then it is a welcome use. But others will argue that the piper dictates the tune. And if a government, instead of the people, are the ones directly funding the Congress and directly having undue influence over the affairs of the INC, then maybe it has come to a point where the Ijaw people are not the ones responsible for Congress, and thereby the leadership of the INC is answerable to those who dictate its tune. We have tried both, both sides. We have had governments who have sponsored without interference, and we have had governments who have sponsored with the sole aim of interfering in the affairs of Ijaw Nation. My brief, therefore, is that every naira that can be mustered by the INC through legitimate resources and legal resources to respond to our financial challenges and in running our affairs is welcome. So does every pan-Ijaw Nation organization who can contribute financially to the coffers of the INC. This is a fact. The experience of Ijaw Nation has been that government public funding for Ijaw organizations have come with competing and conflict of interest, as well as corrupting motives, intentions, and influences that have challenged Ijaw organizations, including the INC. It's not only the INC that's been challenged. To the extent that these organizations become subordinate to partisan and private interests of persons in government who in recent times have demonstrated a lack of understanding of our values and the need for strong, independent Ijaw Nation organizations like the INC. This trend is worsened by the weakening and worsening character of persons who also seek to assume leadership. They look at this as a way of making money. We need to ask those who try to assume leadership what they are bringing to the table. To them, like politicians, the organizations are not platforms of service, but means of and access to resources for survival, power, and influence. Some of these people even look at this as a way of feathering their own nest for their own personal businesses. The combined efforts of the necessity of funds to run Ijaw organizations, the tendency evident in accessing government-sourced funding, its politicization, both for partisan and private motives, intention and influence, and indeed, strange phenomenon where weak characters seeking our platforms of Ijaw organizations as a means to access patronage must be discouraged. We seem now compelled as Ijaw people to reject access to, demand for, and use of Ijaw people's funds available to and coming from government sources. But this really might not be correct, because even if we do contribute individually as Ijaw people, individually as clans, individually as villages, these funds will still be warehoused in the hands of those who run the Ijaw National Congress. And if these people are not conscientious, are not straightforward, are not prudent, then even those funds could be misused. What I'm saying, therefore, is that it's not where the funds come from, but it's the values that the people who are going to use those funds hold that we need to be concentrating and trying to ensure are great values that Ijaw Nation has been known for. These issues, therefore, viewed deeply and thought through critically, is that it's not the source of funds, since the funds are in fact Ijaw Nation's people-owned resources, whether it comes from government or it comes from contributions or it comes from individuals. There is no guarantee that if we don't have people of good character and values, such funds will be used prudently and judiciously. So I want us to think outside the box. And my recommendations, I don't know how much time I have left, is that to address these challenges, my recommendation is for us to establish some form of mechanism to warehouse funds meant for the INC and other Ijaw organizations. The thinking is that the second component is a mechanism to ensure transparent access to, accountable use of, and subjection of fund uses to clear goals, objectives that serve Ijaw Nation's interest in ways that establish measures and means of value for money assessments based on clearly defined performance indicators, KPIs. Okay? To achieve these, the following steps might be necessary. An immediate pursuit and incorporation of an Ijaw Nation Trust Fund with a board made up of Ijaw sons of impeccable character and proven independence in all relevant parameters of behavior and conduct, who then are empowered to hire and fire management teams to operate these funds. Now, these funds can come from all sources, whether it's government, it's individual sources, it's through legislative council, the Bayelsa State, for example, can have a House of Assembly promulgate a law that says a percentage of our resources from FAC will be channeled towards the growth of Ijaw Nation. These funds will be appropriated by the above law from FAC and JAC as proposed above. The annual trust fund will then be used to fund our various organizations. This way, we are saying that
Chief,
whose money that is being used.
You have less than a minute now.
I know, I'm following, sir. I've been told. So in conclusion, until we take this initiative and pursue it, we will continue to have issues of in Ijaw Nation leadership due to funding. There's an issue of trust or lack of it. And for us to gain trust, we must have a view where we have a collective means of contribution and also a collective means of use of the funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Shifa Magbe. We now call on Ambassador Joel Bissina to make his own contribution on the subject. Thank you. 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'm just joining in now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Loud and clear.
Okay. Thank you very much. The previous panelists and the moderator and a host of others who are in attendance in this forum. I think the issue of funding and how to create independent funding mechanism that will guarantee independence of the operation of the INC and other similar organizations. Chief has dealt with the subject matter in a very passionate way. He raised the issue of trust, which is fundamental, and the need for us to begin to look into what will be the source of funding to how we run our organizations. One thing that is true is, I know that there are Ijaw sons and daughters who are desirous to fund Ijaw organizations. But the point is that we have to have a mechanism to create value for the money. You know, because nobody wants to just throw money at organizations or individuals just because they have so much. There has to be what is in it for me. In this case, it may not necessarily be profit, but they will want to see that there is value for money in its investments. And one way to do that is that you want to have goals that are clearly articulated, intervention areas that are well laid out, and then, like Amangbe talked about, KPIs that we measure what we apply those funds into. One thing that we also need to deal with is the issue of entitlements. How do we create that kind of mechanism such that individuals who put their money into it will not hear one day that some persons have just misappropriated the money. The issue of trust funds is great, and I think that's one direction we want to look at. But in creating this trust fund, the proposition that Mr. Megbe put is that the board has to be composed of Ijaw sons and daughters, which is great. But it is still possible to create a trust fund that can attract funds from donor agencies. And if that is what we are looking at, then it need not be all Ijaw affairs. To bring credibility, to bring trust, to bring that kind of inclusiveness into it, we need to have in the management of the fund persons that are not necessarily all Ijaw persons. While we may have a bulk of those who will manage the fund as Ijaws, then we need to see beyond that. Now, in looking at source of funding, one thing is for us to look at the spectrum. The various sources we talked about by SR state government, that's one source. We can also look at our local government. We can look at local government areas, just to take a population of how many local government areas in the Federation are controlled by Ijaw people. That means we are not just looking at only Bayelsa, we are looking at Delta State, we are looking at Ondo State, we are looking at Cross River State, Akwa Ibom and Rivers. So I think what the key here is a mechanism to manage the fund that will ensure transparency, that will ensure fairness, that will ensure equity. It's not on the basis of who know man or who know woman. It's on the basis of what the particular job someone to use the money for. It's not just enough for the fund to be available, but the capacity to manage funds in such a way that you can account it is critical. For some of us who run non-profit organizations, in applying for donor fund, you have to demonstrate to the donor that you know what you are talking about. The what of what you want to do, the how you want to do it, for whose benefit you want to do it, and then how you're going to measure your performance, how you're going to monitor the implementation of program for action. All these are key elements in making sure that such funds and those who contribute the money will have value for the money they contribute to the pool. The other thing also to look at is other foundations. What lesson can we learn from what others are doing? There are family foundations, there are corporations that have established foundations, and a whole range of others. So what lesson can we learn from those foundations? We also need to look at what are the key intervention areas. It cannot be an omnibus fund that will fund everything. So what would be our priorities in terms of this fund, and what can it be applied for? Who can benefit, which organization can benefit, what are the criteria, eligibility criteria well laid out. So there has to be all the structures that need to be put in place need to be there for it to run. Currently, the way, and then the other thing also is those who run these Ijaw organizations, how will they be able to separate themselves from the organizations such that their personal interests will not override organization goals and values? Most times what you hear is that they go to corporations as an organizations, they collect money, and that money is spent as individuals, not most times for the benefit of the entire people. That kind of arrangement is not going to sustain or encourage persons who will fund organizations to continue to fund it. So we need to be able to come clean. We need to be able to keep books. We need to be able to keep accurate records, and develop that culture of being accountable for every income that comes our way. Once we are able to demonstrate that, and then one of the things we also need to look at is how do we want to function? Is the INC, what is the legal status of the INC? If the INC as an organization is not able to receive funds, can it also create a subsidiary organization that can access funding? And that's where, again, the trust fund, again, its management structure, its mandate, and the focus areas also will determine how it can partner, collaborate with other donor agencies and foundations that grant funds. So what is key here is the way we organize ourselves, the way we structure ourselves, the mechanism that we'll put in place to demonstrate to those who fund that their funds will not end in individual pockets. Once we are able to guarantee that, I'm sure the question of independent source of funding for INC and other Ijaw organizations is achievable. I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Bisine, and thanks for adding more to what our chief Amabe Kentebe said. So I'm sure we are all taking notes. And when the time comes for question and answer session, we may probably have some questions to throw at both of you. Now, can we now move swiftly to the next panelist? We have, this is Ebere Fomodo, and we also have Ankyo Briggs. They'll be talking about the quality of delegates and the nomination process for the forthcoming election, the INC. But Mrs. Ebere Fomodo and Ankyo Briggs will be talking about the quality of delegates and the nomination process for the elections. They all have, both of them have 10 minutes each, and the first person to start the process is Mrs. Ebere Fomodo. Can we have you, please, madam?
Good evening, everyone. Okay, evening in Nigeria. So, I'm glad to be in the house, and thanks for the opportunity. I'd like to speak to the qualities of delegates by first reminding the House of the purpose of the INC. One of the speakers, Double Chief Amagbe Kensebe, already mentioned that the purpose, unity, is one of the, at the core of the existence of INC. And beyond unity, cultural heritage, upholding and promoting our cultural heritage, socio-economic development, and political advancement are some of the reasons why INC exists. The INC logo and motto remind us that there's a lot of noise. The INC stands for leadership by service, which means INC will encourage diversity of thought.
Dr. Fomodo,
INC.
I have to mute everyone. You unmute yourself. Okay? Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Can you hear
Good.
me now?
Very good.
Okay, you were not hearing me?
We were. I wanted to get the sound out, the noise for you.
Okay, thank you very much. I started by speaking to the purpose of INC and pointing out that unity, promoting the Ijaw cultural heritage, our socio-economic development, as well as our political advancement, all fall within the purpose of INC. Also, the INC logo and motto clearly speak that INC stands for leadership by service. Leadership by service, which means INC will encourage diversity of thought. INC will encourage inclusiveness. INC will create a culture of trust. INC will discourage selfishness, will promote unselfish mindset. INC will foster unity and build leadership. Those, for most of us, that is the purpose of INC. And so, for the leaders, for those who will hold positions in INC, we expect that they uphold these goals. An INC leader, irrespective of the position, from president to the last of the positions, from national to zonal to clan to chapter. One would expect Ijaw-centric, a passion for promoting the Ijaw culture, Ijaw interest. In so many words, Ijaw first. One would also expect people who step out voluntarily to hold these responsibilities to already accept a code of transparency and accountability. We hear the discussions about how INC should be funded already give the impression that there are some issues with commingling of Congress funds with individual funds. There are also issues with people funding INC with a mindset to compromise the independence. So we need people who will be accountable and transparent in the way they handle funds and other matters. It all means truth. So truthfulness is another quality we expect of delegates. Delegates to the convention and delegates, because to be a delegate, there are certain responsibilities people already have towards Congress. So we expect that for those who are going for the election, as well as those who will be elected, these are qualities they must have. Inclusiveness. They must carry the interest of everyone along in their actions. For those who do not possess these qualities today, there is time. Because they have stepped out to contest, they should know that these are some of the expectations. There should be high moral integrity. For somebody to step out to come and represent our interests, we're paid people. There should be high moral integrity. Political accommodation, we do not expect people who already are leaning towards some specific party affiliations and interests to step out to say we are representing the Ijaw interest, because people are free to hold different political views. So delegates should not be people who have openly and conscientiously identified with certain political interests. And very important too, lawful self-improvement. That somebody steps out to be a delegate or an officer of INC does not mean that person should not make progress in life, but it should be lawful. It should not disregard the laws of the country as well as the laws of Congress. To speak to the nomination process, I have a personal reservation because decisions have been made, and before the discussion started, speakers were told that we are not supposed to criticize. What Citrate has will be followed to the letter, because whatever one says about the process, the nomination process now cannot alter anything. And so I would like to conclude by calling attention to the need for strong governance when the new ESCO takes over. They should be strategic. There's no reason why Ijaw Nation should not have global standards in the way it looks at things. And so they should be strategic. There should be clear plans that can move from one ESCO to another ESCO. And so with these comments, I wish the new ESCO well. Thank you very much.
Fumudo, thank you.
Yes.
Mrs. Fumudo.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that precise and very enlightening presentation. Can I now call upon Q Briggs to come and give talk, please? Thank you. Uncle Briggs. Are you there?
We were at another conference. I wonder if she's left there now, because she was supposed to give her speech.
Right.
If she's not here, we'll come back to her later.
Okay. Thank you, Your Excellency, for that information. Probably it's not out of that conference yet. I will also take on board your advice. So can we swiftly move to panel number 3? The panelist there is Crispin Toby and Sylvester Gary. They'll be talking about electronic voting system. And shall we have the pleasure of having Crispin Toby to start with this discussion? Thank you, Crispin.
Thank you very much, sir. I will try and share my screen. Is it possible to share my screen, please?
Hold on.
Thank you.
David, can you make him host?
Yes, Crispin. He's disappearing. I saw him a while. There you are.
Yep.
Okay. You're on, Kristen.
Okay, brilliant. Give me 2 seconds. Okay, right. All right, can we see my screen then?
Sure.
Brilliant.
This thing is blocking part of it now. This meeting is being recorded. It's blocking part of the screen.
Yeah, my apologies. I'm not sure I can do that much about it. But it should be fine. It should be fine. Your Royal Highnesses, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to you all. I've been asked to talk about electronic voting. And basically, I see that the response to the security and transparency concerns in our voting process. Right, so I think I want to start by looking at technology, reflecting back at how technology has shaped and continues to shape our society. I remember back in the days when I would have to write a letter to my aunt, from Nigeria. My dad would tell me it'll take about 14 days or so to get to the UK and before she'll respond and all of that. And today everything is instant. It's emails, it's instant messaging. I remember when, your bank statement or your bank balance was all held on a manual book and we transacted with cash. And today it's all different. We've got mobile banking, online banking. Technology has affected and influenced every aspect of our life. The way we make purchases, you don't have to go physically to a shop to make those purchases. You can go online to make those purchases. The way we learn, the way we collaborate, the way we are meeting today, it has affected all of that. And I think it's safe to say that no aspect of our life or society is immune from the influence of technology. Our voting system is no exemption. If you look at the way we have done life in society, nothing has stayed the same because technology has been used to solve problems. Technology has been used to improve our standard of living. And so I want us to look at electronic voting from that perspective. But of course, like most institutions, we have used paper voting in the past, I believe. But the truth is that most jurisdictions, most institutions are increasingly embracing electronic voting, especially on small and medium scale. And what is electronic voting? It simply involves any form of voting that uses modern technology to either cast or tally votes. So why do we want to embrace electronic voting or e-voting at this time? Well, first of all, it gives us better transparency. So events are better logged. There's an audit trail of every event that is carried out. So if I go in and make any changes or even vote or alter anything, my IP address is logged. The time I've done it is logged. it's quite transparent. It also mitigates the risk that we often face with voting in terms of, crowd and disruption. And then with electronic voting, you have a wider reach. So obviously with us, there are many of us who are not physically in the country. With the e-voting, you have a much, much wider reach and attendance. And then of course, e-voting reduces that human influence or errors. It can also be very, very cost effective in the long run. But of course, there are concerns about electronic voting. So people will talk about system hacking. I mean, we saw what happened in the US and all the accusations. But of course, the thing to bear in mind is that these are more of an issue when it comes to large scale deployment. So you're talking about maybe presidential voting for a country. But on medium and small scale voting, when it comes to things like schools or unions or communities, it is much, the risk is much lesser. Another risk or concern about electronic voting is impersonation. So someone else can, vote in my stead. But this is often mitigated by the use of things like voters' pins, smart cards, and biometrics. So that could include videos. Sometimes you have to use a video to cast your vote from your remote destination, remote location. Consideration. So if we're looking to imbibe or embrace e-voting, what are the things that we might want to think about? The first thing I'd want to think about is, on what scale? Is it large, medium, or small? Obviously for us, it's going to be more on the small scale. And like I said earlier, that poses less of a risk. And then what are the immediate issues we are looking to address, or problems we are looking to solve by e-voting? So is it things like attendance, being able to reach a wider audience? Is it to eliminate crowding? Is it to address security issues? So these are the things you begin to consider. You don't embrace a technology for the fun or for the sake of doing it. You're embracing it because it's actually solving a problem. And so I want to talk about briefly about the Synfres e-voting platform. Synfres, I am the chairman of the board of Synfres Limited, and one of the solutions we provide is an e-voting platform. Now, I must say at this point that there are so many other e-voting platforms online. There is WeVote, there's so many, and they're all cloud-based, and most of them actually deliver the same service and offer the same value that I've described above. So still talking about the Synfres e-voting, it is geared toward the small and medium scale electioneering or voting process. It provides a secure and convenient platform. So we make use of voters' pins, which is sent to your mobile phone ahead of the election. And then the process is simply, you open up an election and you get your voters to register. You create the election you want to have. You add your candidates, you clear your candidates, and then the voting itself commences. And then you publish the results. And the beauty of it is that like I said before, there is a clear audit trail when it comes to e-voting. You have your reports and analysis. So for example, you might want to see, hang on, what are the demographics like? In terms of age distribution, how did voters, vote? So in summary, I believe strongly that there is a strong case for e-voting, particularly in small and medium scale institutions. I believe that the use of e-voting, and there is statistics to back that up, the use of e-voting is very much on the rise, especially in places like schools and communities. Thank you very much. I want to hope that I was able to sort of like touch on the area that we are looking at much of a concern to us as the INC. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chris Fitobi, for that presentation. I will now call upon Sylvester Gary to come in to tell us exactly what he has to say about electronic voting system. Thank you.
Sylvester Gary?
Sylvester Gary, are you there?
Yeah, I admitted him. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
A minute ago.
Sylvester Gary?
Yeah, hello, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, your 10 minutes is running. Thank you.
Oh, my 10 minutes. Okay, let me just go straight to the to the point. And since my time is already gone, I didn't design my presentation for to pass company, but I just want to talk about the what e-voting is all about, and to encourage the INC on what of the various what protocol or what type of e-voting that the INC should use. And finally, I would just want to let the platform know that INC know that the forthcoming election that our company can give out our video monitoring system for them to use. They can throw the election on our platform, just the video part of it to use. We don't do election softwares for now. So let me just go straight to my presentation. I don't know, my network is somehow messing up here today. First of all, just talk about the various kind of voting. We talked about the topic for today is transmitting transparent electronic voting system, but I went ahead to name it transparent electronics voting system machine because because when you talk about voting and talk about electronic voting system, first of all, you have to define some terms so that the layman or those that are not ICT inclined will understand what you're trying to say. And since I'm not here to advertise our produce, but I'm here to just advise the NEC on what to do, the kind of voting system that they should use. We talk about the transparency. What do we mean by transparency? What do we mean by electronic voting machine? What do we mean by system? Of course, an electronic voting machine is just an equipment that is used to vote electronically without using the formal way of voting, thumb printing like that. That's what an electronic voting machine is all about. And I had to make it that very, very brief. And it is also possible for you to create what they call the e-voting systems. But for now, we're going to work on the electronic voting system. But the electronic voting system is divided into various components. Before you can go that component, you have to talk about what do you mean by transparent, what do we mean by electronic voting machine, and what do you mean by system. And transparent has various definitions. I had to consult the Oxford Dictionary. You talk about the physical context of transparency, talk about the political context of transparency, you talk about the ICT concept of transparency, you also talk about the physician, or as in the physics concept of transparency. They all have different definitions, and the physical concept talks about making, allowing information to pass through anybody. So you can see both from both sides. The political definition of transparency just talk about the easy way to perceive or detect any fraud or malpractices in any system. The why the ICT or computer definition of transparency just talks about how you can set up a system whereby the user will not be aware that you are watching them or you are monitoring what is happening. Just create an interface where the user will not be aware of what is happening behind the scene. Then the physician just talks about how to transfer information on molecules or particles from one end. Talk about for any EVM to be acceptable, it must be verifiable, it must be transparent. These are two key components that you look at. Electronic voting machine has two units. A perfect electronic voting machine has two units. It has it. The control unit talks about how to control what the voters are doing, and the ballot unit is for the voters. So the control unit determines how the ballot is being done, how the voters is being done. And this has to, hello?
Hello, we are listening.
Yeah, we're listening. Go
Hello?
ahead.
Hello?
The time is
Hello?
running.
Continue.
Hello? I hear you. Hello? Hello? Okay.
Go on, we are hearing you, Gary.
Okay. So the control unit and the ballot unit, like I said, the control unit handles the polling officers, the control units, the ballot unit. It has an LED light that displays the screen the numbers of the voting results and like that. Why the ballot unit just handles why the ballot unit just handles the electorate, the voters like that. That form.
I think you're echoing.
Gary, do you have
yes,
two
yes,
devices
yes.
on?
Yeah, I'm echoing. Yeah.
Do you have two devices on?
You're giving feedback.
Yeah,
so you
I
need to
know.
Okay. But you can remove your video so that we can maximize your network, your bandwidth.
Okay, let me just
use your voice.
Let me put off my video.
Are you there?
Sylvester, are you there? Hello, Sylvester. Gary, are you there?
Yes, he's here. Hello, Sylvester. I see him here.
Right. Is having some technical problems?
I suspect.
I think it's a network issue. Okay.
It's been taken out.
Okay.
I think while we're waiting, Ankyo Briggs stepped in.
Okay. If the audience will allow me, could I suggest that we perhaps have to go on, revisit the Ankyo situation so that we round that up as quickly as possible. And then if Sylvester has time, actually he has only 3 minutes to go before the technical issue happened. We may probably come back and give him that 3 minutes, but time is not on our side. So if you allow me, can I invite Ankyo to come in, now that she's here, to actually complete that second topic that we wanted to cover, quality of delegates and the nomination process for the forthcoming elections.
Good evening, bros. I just came in, so I don't know. You want
some time to relax, to get yourself together?
No, what I mean by I just came in, I don't know where you want me to interface. I don't know where you want me to come in. I mean, it's a joy issue, so I mean, there is hardly any place that I won't be able to say something. So I don't know where you want me to come in.
I want you to come into. We've already discussed your topic before, and we had the honor of Mrs. Bire Fumudo who spoke. Because you weren't around, the general view is that we should move that forward until you are here. Now that you are here and we're having problem with the third topic, I believe we should give you the time and opportunity to step in now to complete that panel discussion.
Oh, okay, sir. What is the discussion? I mean, what's the topic? Because I don't have the topic. Nobody told me anything.
The quality of the delegates and the nomination process. Quality of the delegates and the nomination process. That's the topic.
Okay. All right. I believe that in the past we must have a pattern, a process that we already have. But quite honestly, the process I believe should be based on the delegates being represented through their zones, through their clans, whichever identification methods that we use to represent ourselves. That's one. The delegates should be based on the fact that they are known in their clan or in their communities as being interested and being having contributed to Ijaw issues, having devoted time and effort and known to their people, because it is about representing their people. So I believe that the delegates should be people that we can trust. They should be people that we can rely on to do what they are told. For instance, if somebody is coming from my clan or from my community as a delegate, he is not going there or she is not going there to represent her own personal candidate. She or he will be going there to represent the candidate of the community or the candidate of the clan or the zone. And so it should be, they should be able to be trusted that if they get there. So I'm happy to hear the method of voting that will be taking place, or the style of e-voting, so that we know that the people are going to do as they are told. So we get the right candidates that we have nominated to go and represent us on Ijaw matter. So basically, it should be about trust. It should be about reliability, and we must choose the best this time round, and not people who will go there and start fighting and taking us to court and making it seem as if Ijaw Nation belongs to them as a people or as individuals rather, instead of them belonging to Ijaw Nation. I mean, for me, that's the way I would suggest that we go about nominating, electing people this time round, so that we will have people who will actually be speaking Ijaw people's mind and Ijaw people's desires in this Nigeria that we find ourselves in. Hello? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that short summary. And I would like to apologize to other speakers that were there before and queue. I just felt we need to wrap up some few things so that we can move on. My apologies to Elaye Otofunowe and Professor Didi Moro. So we are moving now straight to the fourth group of panelists, and they'll be talking about candidates' quality and eligibility this evening. So we have the privilege to have Elaye Otofunowe and Professor Didi Moro. And Elaye Otofunowe, we start the process. They will be talking about candidates' quality and their eligibility.
Moderator.
Yeah.
Please allow Gary to finish his presentation so that we can proceed. He's back in the house now.
He's back in the house.
Yes.
Gary.
Okay. We have, Gary, we have less than 4 minutes actually. So if you can.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, please.
Hello, Gary. Proceed.
Gary, you have the floor, please.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay. I will just go straight to the. I'll go straight to my conclusion because I was able. I captured the conclusion of the whole matter in my last slide. So let me just go there instead. Now, like I said, we are. I'm not here to advertise our product or that we are software engineering, software developer, but I'm here to just assist the NEC to decide the kind of EVM they should use. Now, The quality, the content of the EVM is that you just look at the table under my conclusion and capture. Now, for transparency, you must be sure that the EVM or the electronic voting system you are using must be verifiable and must be transparent. Now, for the electronic voting system machine or the electronic voting method they are going to use, you have to make sure that the EVM must contain a blockchain technology. Just because I don't have time again, I would have explained blockchain technology. It's there in my slide. Then for a system, the definition of a system simply means that the EVM must have integrity, confidentiality, and it must be auditable legitimacy. Now, integrity simply means the voters must be able to trust the EVM, the electronic voting system, or the electronic voting machine that will be used for the election. Therefore, confidentiality simply means that the electoral process and secrets, for example, now, when the voter votes, whoever is voting for or whoever forces him or her to vote must not know who he or she is voting for. You see, in electronic, in the election process, that will be must be able to cover the secrets of the voters, so that nobody knows who they vote for. They'll just see the results. Then the EVM or the electronic voting system must be auditable, as in it should be able to print out a result. I mean, a voter will know that I vote so and in any mistake or fraud or if there's any suspects, they can go to the system and audit it. They can investigate the system, investigate the processes. That's what the audit for. Then see, it must have all the components: verifiable, transparency, and finally, all these components of the system: integrity, confidentiality, or auditability, and legitimacy must also be there. This is where I wanted to electronic voting systems must have the content of this, my conclusion. And finally, like I said, one of our softwares called Earthsphere has a live video streaming feature there that we can use to transmit the election to all Ijaw brothers and sisters wherever they are, so that they can monitor what is happening, the election, where the election is going on, like that. So I would just like to conclude that since I cannot go through my whole slides any longer, I have just 4 minutes. Or if I have any other 2 minutes available, then I can just talk about the technology. Moderator.
Thank you.
Moderator, can I have technology, or there's no time? Let me just leave it like that. Just capture my conclusion. Hello?
Thank you, Gary.
Yeah.
On mute, moderator on mute, please.
Moderator.
Moderator on mute, okay. On mute.
Elder Perry?
Thank you.
You're muted. Yes, we can hear you now.
All right, thank you. Without taking too much of your time, could I now invite the 4th panelist, Elaye Otofunaway and Professor D.D. Moro, to talk about candidates, their quality and eligibility, what Ijaw Nation is looking for in the forthcoming INC election. Over to you, Elaye, first. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Roland. Your Royal Highnesses, members of CITRE and ELECO, respected compatriots, ladies and gentlemen. I greet everyone warmly, depending on where you are in the globe. I know it's good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. That we are able to engage ourselves from all over the world underscores the need for us to put in our very best in whatever we do. That means we have capacity that we can tap in from anywhere in the world. We're having this meeting now. I'm not in the country. I know Roland is not, and we're all over the world. And that's the job man for you today. Some are in Yanagua, some are in Abuja, Lagos, and the US, and where have you. So this is even more so given the myriad of challenges which stare us as a nation today. A lot of challenges face us as a region, as a people, and even as individuals. So we must network as much as possible to get the best for our people. So a few of us, and again, from all over the world, came together and documented thoughts about the kind of leaders that should lead the Ijaw nation today. This document was produced sometime late in 2019 and 2020. And and as I'll be sharing it momentarily, you would see that it is applicable to every position. Indeed, when we shared it out, this is information age, the information went out, and some people from other ethnic nationalities are actually looking for this document to use, because there are things that will position us for tomorrow. So the document went through very rigorous examination, reviews, and discussions based on the issues confronting us. And the work was done pro bono by concerned Ijaw people. So it took months of hard work, but it was done by Ijaw people who are very passionate about what is going on with their people. So, and that tells me the one thing that we need for the leaders in Ijaw today, in Ijaw land today, is passion. Somebody had used the word Ijaw-centric. I think it was A.B. Fumodo. We must, and Amagbetu alluded to it when he said, people should be selfless and committed to the Ijaw cause. So we believe that not addressing the issue of leadership in the INC this time will stop us from taking our rightful place in the region, Nigeria, and the world. So I like to, I don't know, but I shared this document, but I don't know if it can be brought up, but otherwise. So we said we have 10 desirable qualities for leadership in Ijaw land. And these are recommended. And we believe that, talking to Eleko now, Eleko was the Eleko is constituted, Eleko is made up of people of
Moses.
I think there's a distraction there.
Yeah. There's a distraction. Wait, please. We shouldn't share the meeting. There's only one meeting now, please.
So the membership of Eleko is made.
Hello?
Please hold on. Hold on, please.
I say Eleko.
Okay.
Yeah. Eleko is made up of people of very high reputation. And that means that the expectation of Eleko is that they will reproduce their kind to do that. And so what we're doing is reminding of ourselves, if you like, of the kinds of people who Ijaw people are. And A.B. Fumodo mentioned the word truth. Ijaw means truth. So it's telling ourselves the truth about who we are and making sure that that truth is used to produce the kind of people who will lead us in the next dispensation. Now, so we're saying that these qualities should be applied in screening or selecting candidates for elective and executive offices, and for evaluation of such officers and representatives in Ijaw land. And candidates must possess the attributes where applicable. And That means that whoever comes in as a member of the executive of INC should be told that there is an evaluation mechanism. So we are going to screen them, select them before they are voted for. So whoever goes in, it is assumed that whoever is presented as meeting the criteria should actually be somebody who is electable. So the screening process should actually eliminate any person who is not suitable at this time. The person may be suitable tomorrow, but we must make sure that whoever is a candidate screened and presented to the electorate must meet some basic criteria, and I'll just share some of them. And in addition to meeting those criteria, in the course of their work, they will be evaluated. So if somebody who is a member of the EXCO goes into office and commits offenses, these same attributes will be used in evaluating them. So if you get into office and you do things that are questionable, you will say you presented yourself as so and so, but you have been found wanting in character to represent us as a people. So it's all about accountability. So whoever comes in, we are saying, must have good character and must be honest. So it must demonstrate high ethical and moral values of truthfulness, humility, and transparency in previous public and political offices held, and must not have a public record of corruption and betrayal of common interest. Whoever seeks to lead us, vision and accountability. Whoever seeks to serve in the INC must be prepared to articulate a vision and readily present a transformative plan of action for which he or she will be held accountable. So if I say I am coming to INC as president, and this is what I will do during my tenure, we don't want a situation which we are finding in Nigeria where promises are made by elected officers and they get in there, they forget what they do. So we should be able to hold them accountable. So don't come and make promises that you cannot fulfill, then expect that we will not complain, because we will complain. So we also, this person should show conviction in the job vision as enshrined in the job charter. Now, I know somebody else will probably talk about the job charter, which is a product that has been bought by INC, but you must have a vision. You must key into the vision of the job people. Competence. Whoever comes in there is not going to tell me that, oh, I finished from school and that's it. We want to be able to see that, oh, you've been able to do this and this. Verifiable. How can we show that you are actually who you say you are? That you can actually do, you have the requisite skills to do what you say you are coming to do for us. And you must be able to manage human and capital resources. You can't come and lead a people of how many million Ijaw people and say you have not been able to run an organization that has more than 3 or 4 people. It's going to be very difficult. Show verifiable track record of commitment and involvement in selfless promotion of the Ijaw cause, and then demonstrate a good understanding of governance, social, political, and developmental issues in Ijaw land and the Niger Delta in general. We want somebody who can network in the Niger Delta, that the person will come and be able to hold us and will say, yes, that's our leader. I don't want to be ashamed of my leader. I want a leader that I'll be proud of. I have a good understanding and be willing to practice the rudiments of legislative duties to the benefit of his or our constituency where applicable. So if we have somebody who is leading us and there is a matter in the National Assembly, the person should have the competence to go there and the boldness and the charisma to be able to go there and convince people and represent us well. Speak. And when he's on TV or radio, I want to be proud to say that guy is articulate and is able to speak to the issues. Team spirit and networking. be able to build partnerships and network easily and influence people positively in the overall interest of Ijaw Nation in particular and Niger Delta. Whoever it is will have to network to be able to negotiate for the best for the nation. We hear people talking about state creation, local government creation, and what have you. We want people who will be able to speak and speak convincingly, be able to communicate effectively, to reach out to and seek input from stakeholders at all levels, using basic communication tools towards achieving our common cause. To be able to speak Ijaw language to some extent, at least. To be able to understand the culture and know how to relate with the fisherman in the village, as well as relate with the man in Aso Rock. That's the kind of person we're talking about. Other critical factors, he must be able to make a mark outside politics. So we don't want somebody, because you have been something in politics and that qualifies you. No, beyond politics, what have you done for the Ijaw people? What have you done for yourself? What have you done to humanity? What's your contribution? Show evidence of impact or benefits to Ijaw people and known Ijaw causes achieved with previous opportunities of high public office compared to level of authority, resources, and duration of opportunities or office held. So whoever it is should be able to tell us that, look, you trusted me with this before, and this is what I did. I had this position before, and this is what I delivered on. We must be able to, the person is seeking a position. So he must be able to demonstrate to us who he thinks he is. So, these qualities, in our opinion, the opinion of the drafters of this, is that we should use this to even present people. So if the federal government says, look, we want people to represent us in XYZ position, we want nominees from this, we should be able to use these leadership qualities to identify people that will go and represent us. It's about time we stop the one that, this man is my brother, is my friend, and as such, whether he's qualified or not, just put him there. It's time we stop it, because other people are defeating us, other people are shaming us, because we have been making the mistake of what the big tribes do, because they have more than enough people in position. They don't mind if they have one or two of their brothers to help. But we are desperate to get our people back in shape. So these qualities will be used in engaging. We should use them in engaging in person or as group, the aspirants or potential appointees for positions of authority, screening political aspirants during primary elections. We should do that. I mean, we're just saying that these leadership qualities should be what should guide all of us, so that we will all aspire to present ourselves worthy both in character and in service. We should be servant leaders. We should go into offices. We should look for people who have gone into offices and made sacrifices, use their time, their resources to help Ijaw Nation. Those are the kind of people who qualify to be in INC today. I don't know. I have just 2 minutes left.
You have 2 minutes, please.
Yes, okay. So as ELECO charged, and of course, I know we have some of the delegates here, as ELECO and delegates charged with the responsibility of birthing a new INC, I believe you have been chosen because you've come with some attributes of vision, accountability, character, integrity, competence, and honesty, and are committed to bequeathing an INC ESCO with the same attributes. So whatever you do, you will be reflecting yourselves. The people you screen and present to Ijaw Nation will be a reflection of who you are. So it's time to put our money where our mouth is. Thank you very much for your time, and God bless Ijaw Nation.
Thank you very much, Alaye. Thank you for your views. Now, could I call Professor Didi Murray to present his views on what or the type of qualities we expect those who want to aspire to leadership position in INC. Thank you, Prof. Professor Didi Moro, are you there? Prof, where are you?
Okay. I said good day to all Izons in Nigeria and the diaspora. My Lord temporal, my Lord spiritual. May I begin my contribution by expressing my sincere appreciation and unalloyed gratitude to those who facilitated my being here this evening with a desire to electing an effective INC leadership. There are certain facts I want to mention quickly, that we have well over 450 ethnic nationalities in this country, and we have been balkanized into about 7 states in the same Nigerian state. But despite our enormous contributions of over 95% of our gross domestic product, we have been denied everything that we are supposed to be entitled to. And this has been well captured by the Willings Commission in 1958 when our area was declared a difficult terrain. And having said all this, Wikipedia has a record that we are about 8 and 9. However, from all indication, we are well over 14 million Izons in Nigeria. So in our desire to ensure that effective, result-oriented, and purposeful leadership, which must have very strong intellectual basis, is elected, then there is a serious need of a paradigm shift from the old method. The INC of the money bags who hijacked it and the elderly in their 70s, 80s, and 90s as leaders of INC is no longer in vogue. For us to have our desired credible leadership, the delegate process from the clan level must be very literate individuals who had held positions of responsibilities. Previous INC election delegates were usually unpicked by the power brokers. This is not in the interest of the Izon nation. There is therefore the need to screen and all candidates thoroughly by the ELECO with adherence to the INC constitution and its provisions. But in addition to the INC constitutional provisions, like candidates must not be bankrupt, must not be an ex-convict, must be of good mental health and individual health. Additional criteria are suggested because we don't want people who aspire to INC position for pecuniary gains. I reminded a few of us a few years ago when I visited an INC president in his campus residence and saw about 10 cars parked and covered, brand new. So, and I knew his salary could not buy even one of those cars. INC position should not be seen as one of the major political parties where national cake is shared, but should be seen as a call to service, a sacrifice to make life better and more meaningful to the downtrodden majority Ijaws. People without a visible means of livelihood should be screened out, and those known UMPADEC and NDDC contractors who may not have the time, the intellect, and the dedication should please leave the INC alone to those who can lead us as a people. We need exceptional leadership in the INC as we have remained voiceless for too long in the wilderness as a people, our octogenarians and nonagerians should please humbly play the role of advisors to our young, energetic leaders, whom I'm suggesting should be within the age range of 40 to 55 years, who can scale the fence if the need arises. I want to sincerely call on Bayelsa State government and the governor and the government to please keep off the electoral process by allowing us to elect credible leaders who will be able to work with the Bayelsa State government, considering its interest and commitment. According to John C. Maxwell, leadership is defined as one is defined as a leader when is one who knows the way, who goes the way, and shows the way. A leader must prove to be a difference maker between success and failure. A good leader has a futuristic vision and knows how to turn his ideas into real-world success. Servant leaders are needed in this state. We should avoid unnecessary conflict of interest among those elected. In addition to all the conditions listed above, I want to add that the ELECO must consider additional leadership qualities to separate good leaders from the bad ones. And they must also sort for this in our INC leaders. I have about 15 of them, unlike my co-panelists. One, honesty and integrity. Confidence to talk, when to talk, and how to say it without looking at books. To inspire others, people that will be able to inspire others. People who are committed and have passion for the Ijaw struggle. People who are good communicators. People who are good decision makers, who have the capabilities of making decisions that will better the loss of the entire Ijaw nation. People who will be accountable to the Ijaw nation when beckoned on to explain anything. Non-people who threaten us with our money by taking us to the court. People who can delegate and empower others. People who have creativity and innovation at their palm. People who have empathy. People who are resilient. People who cannot be intimidated by any means, who are ready to commit their entire life to the struggle. And those who are emotionally intelligent. Another attribute will be humility, transparency, and people who have vision and purpose for the entire Ijaw nation. If those to be appointed or elected, as the case may be, possess some of these attributes as aspirant and prior to their election, then surely the INC will be able to lead us to our desired destination of self-determination, and soon we will gather to celebrate the Ijaw Republic. Thank you very much, and God bless you all for listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Moro. Thank you very much, Professor Moro.
Thank you so much.
Without taking too much of your time now, ladies and gentlemen, we are now moving down to the fifth panel discussion. It's about leadership, accountability, and social contract with the Ijaw nation. Leadership, accountability, and social contract with the Ijaw nation. And that discussion will be led by Inuro Wills and Pastor Efie Bribina. Discussion will be led by Barrister Inuro Wills and Pastor Efie Bribina. They will be speaking on leadership, accountability, and social contract with Ijaw nation. Over to you, Barrister Wills.
Thank you very much, moderator. I didn't know that I would have just 10 minutes. So this
10 minutes, yes.
I wish I knew I would have just 10 minutes. It may be a bit of a struggle for me, but I'll try. So thank you to the
I
pilot.
was thinking of reducing it to 7 minutes because of time, but go on. Yes, give me 10 minutes.
That's serious.
Thank you for organizing this dialogue, the pilot group. Hopefully it will be, however modest, a milestone in the emergent clarion call within the Ijaw nationality for self-examination. And I wish that David could share the screen, as in put up my paper. So that some parts I'll just keep and stick to.
I'm working on that.
Some context is necessary. The quest of the Ijaw people for self-determination predates Nigeria, and in fact was part of why Britain's colonial crown felt compelled to take direct control of.
Inero,
Yes.
Inero, 1 minute, please.
Yes.
Neuro is breaking.
Since we are speaking on the same topic,
yes,
I would like to suggest that you take 15 minutes and leave 5 minutes for me out of the 20 minutes.
Very, very gracious of you.
That is the team spirit. That is the team spirit. Thank you.
Indeed. So, in fact, the Ijaw people's quest for self-determination was part of why Britain felt compelled to take direct control of that part of its trading sphere of influence that mutated into Nigeria. We are all aware of how Ijaw sovereigns like King Koko of Nembe and King Jaja of Opobo embodied that resolve even before Nigeria came into being. The majestic Harold Apabrie and his class of leaders, Adakaboro, Kayama Declaration, led by the Orontos and Isaac Walkers and Pattersons and Twodolos, the strident advocacy of Ankyo Briggs are just some of the successive incarnations of that resolve throughout Nigeria's history. So the quest for self-determination needs no introduction. What is, however, becoming clear is that self-determination will not and cannot be feasible without self-examination. The truth is not very pretty. The failure, and excuse me if you find some of my views a bit strong, but I think that the failure of the Ijaw leadership, despite some since 1999 till date, is quite gross on all levels and virtually in all ramifications: national, state, political, militant, traditional, community, civil, cultural, environmental, economic, infrastructural, moral, and social. And I underline moral. Despite much higher financial resources and political authority that we have received since 1999, we have not been able to convert these to a visible improvement of the lot of our people. So you have a situation where the environment is getting more polluted, our people are more deeply divided, underdeveloped, militarized and militantized, inflamed and radicalized, unsafe, jobless, drugs and cult infested, divested of their dignity, gravely disillusioned and countlessly poorer than they were pre-1999. The classical paradox of plenty. And there's an oil canvas I would like to present. The Ijaw environment, as I've already said, is steadily the worst oil polluted part of the planet. No cleanup in sight. Over 10 full oil blocks, not marginal fields. OMLs 18, 29, 42, 52, 53, 55, 83, 85, 86, 88, etc. in our territory have been divested to new owners in the last 2 to 10 years without as much as any equity vested in our savagely ravaged host communities. Every version of the celebrated PIB has been further watered down in terms of the provision for host communities. From the originally broached 10% equity, 10%, to 5% of net profits, to 2.5% of net profits, to now 2.5% of operating expenses, not equity. This oil canvas was painted under the supervision of at least 3 succeeding Ijaw-speaking ministers of petroleum resources. And all the while, the Ijaw chorus of resource control and self-determination was going on. So where was the disconnect? And of course, we had our INC also, which was quite present and was instrumental to some of the modest milestones that we also saw before it fell into crisis. So the question is, as our people will say, who do us this thing? Or who done it? And I say that is the Ijaw leadership. And remember, I am laying emphasis on self-examination. The moral being that we cannot keep blaming others. We have to look ourselves in the mirror and look at where we're coming from, decide how strongly we want to depart from where we're coming. There are all kinds of challenges, both local and global, facing us that we must deal with and we must prepare for. The world is embarking, including big oil companies, embarking on energy transition for an oncoming climate compliant global economy. Nigeria is tottering on the precipice. A global pandemic has disrupted settled norms, but is force-forwarding a digital and knowledge economy. 1,000 naira to $1 is no longer a crazy forecast. Insecurity has gone haywire, manifesting in so many different ways. How do the Ijaw people find voice between and betwixt these headwinds? How do we build preparedness, resilience, productivity, and competitiveness in a time like this? Quality leadership is indispensable at the best of times. But what we need now, even beyond that, is superior and strategic leadership to steer us through and above the vortex of crisis, local and global. Without self-appraisal, we cannot find the right leadership. We may be condemned to repeating the same old mistakes. Yet, we are a people usually averse to leadership appraisal. There is possibly no, on record, no strategic appraisal, in fact, zero strategic appraisal of the impact of INC or of militancy or of NDDC, the Niger Delta Amnesty Program, the Nigerian Content Program, or even of political hegemons on peace, stability, and socioeconomic development of Ijaw land. These are some of the reasons why we must set out to do a deep introspection and X-ray standards for leadership recruitment for various roles, get them, the candidates, to sign a social contract, as it were, sign a social contract and hold them accountable to the people for performance of that contract. Social contract and leadership accountability, fallacy or fantasy. It's easy to talk about some of these concepts and constructs, but we need to pin them to our reality. Now, social contracts, I say, may be a fallacy if we just talk about it because we borrowed it from the philosophy books and from jurisprudence through the years. We've got to forge a real social contract, just the way that we all shout ourselves hoarse about the illegitimacy of the Nigerian Constitution. That is how also we must insist on forging, on not just presenting a document that is nicely articulated, but actually connecting it with the people, creating ownership, popular ownership for it. So it is useful to state that the logical sequence is for the construct of a social contract to be in place before we can expect leadership accountability. But they must be worked out and worked for, not assumed or wished for, or else our idea of a social contract will remain a fallacy and our desire for accountability a fantasy. There is work to do. And this is where active citizenship, civil society consciousness, and critical self-appraisal come in. Our collective failure to do these things, work out terms of leadership through constant, frank expression of our aspirations, values, expectations for performance, and so on, expectations of performance of the social contract, that we can expect our governors, lawmakers, Amayanabos, INC, etc., to perform. Our failure to do that will leave us in a situation where we have no organic social contract that we can hold our leaders to, including the incoming INC leadership. When we take the trouble to engage our people, these kinds of dialogues that we're having, but on a much wider scale, regular scale, that way it becomes incapable of annihilation. That is the social contract that we would have built. It becomes incapable of annihilation or manipulation by external oppressors or by one capricious Ijaw governor after another, as we have seen in recent years. That will lay the foundation for a living social contract and afterwards leadership accountability within the context of the INC. At the moment, despite all that INC may have achieved before it went into a state-leveraged limbo, INC does not appear to be adequately rooted across the entire Ijaw land, the way perhaps Mosop was or is in Ogoni land. So what I mean is that beyond many of us here who have the passion, the average Ijaw person in his community, how much does he know or appreciate of even all the good work that INC is doing? So that routine must take place. The selection or election process is of course crucial to any prospects for accountability. A lot of talk has been done about delegates, the delegate system and quality of delegates. So I'd like to skip that, except to remind us of what the delegate system used in the governorship primaries, the last Bayelsa governorship primaries, what it did to our political culture and how it limited the space, more or less, to money bags. Many of us here know the story. Delegates, once they were selected, started waiting for their millions, some of them collecting from multiple candidates. So what social contract do you expect to result from that? Is the INC delegate system free of the same plague? That question needs to be thoroughly interrogated. If not for these immediate elections, then at least for subsequent elections. Intrinsic to leadership selection, representative engagement, accountability, and overall qualitative leadership outcomes is vision. Vision. Without it, there is no need to discuss leadership. Yet, in Bayelsa State, for example, there has been no sign of leadership vision for at least the last 20 years, between 3 to 4 state administrations. And I will not go into the details of some of the examples that I've given there. I'll just skip that. So I say that without vision, there can be no standards and therefore no leadership. Vision is what leadership aspirants must offer to the constituency they want to lead. Organizations such as INC must also have their institutional vision. So the individual candidates or leaders will have to show us their vision. But even our institutions, our platforms must have their institutional vision. When this is clearly articulated, presented, and negotiated with the constituency at large, along with minimum goals and standards for delivery, the result is a proper social contract, or what in the lexicon of contemporary performance management is known as a service level agreement. Just to round off on visionary leadership, we need to remind ourselves that what the Ijaw Nation needs now, their INC, are transformational and transcendental leaders, not the kind of transactional leaders we are tired of. We call for leaders like the Mandelas and the Gandhis and the Yasser Arafats and Maktoums and Ken Saro-Wiwa, Yitzhak Rabin, Ayatollah Khomeini, what they were to their people. Those are the kinds of leaders we need to have now for the Ijaw people. That is merely an aspiration, however. To bring it to pass, we must monitor and enforce the social contract that would have emerged from the visioning and social negotiation process. We already have excellent working documents for the Ijaw vision and social contracts for further consideration and reaffirmation if necessary, and for concerted enforcement. The Kayama Declaration, and lately the Ijaw Charter and Ijaw Nation Code of Ethics, Leadership, and Governance, prepared through rigorous rounds of consultations, retreats, harmonization, and articulation, led by platforms such as the Ijaw Elders Forum, Ijaw Nation Forum, Ijaw Professionals Association, Ijaw Women Connect, and Ambassador Foundation. Many attended this meeting today were part of that process that went round Ijaw territory. The Ijaw Charter and the Code, possibly the first dedicated self-examination and accountability code for an ethnic nationality in Nigeria, have thankfully been adopted as part of the new INC constitution. But these templates for the Ijaw social contract are nothing if we do not animate, promote, and implement them together. The Ijaw Charter is a compact instrument with a concise outline of the ordeal endured by our people during the Nigerian project, then setting out the Ijaw vision and culminating in the declaration of the Ijaw agenda. And I've set out the very brief Ijaw vision contained in the charter. The Ijaw agenda section summarizes the collective aspirations to self-determination, real federalism and resource ownership, good governance, including traditional governance, accountable and participatory traditional governance, environmental justice and sustainability, and educational and technological advancement. On the other hand, the Ijaw Nation Code of Ethics, Leadership, and Governance sets out a framework for leadership values, governance culture, minimum development standards, accountability mechanisms, and ethical citizenship. Combined with the INC Constitution and numerous other iterations of our collective expectations, these templates provide a roadmap for leadership delivery and accountability. In this context, working with complementary and alternative platforms like Pandef and some of the ones earlier cited, it will be part of the remit of a serious-minded, fresh INC leadership to, for instance, one, connect INC to the grassroots of Ijaw land, so it becomes the ANC, that is the African National Congress of South Africa, to the Ijaws. Rapidly mobilize mass membership. And I emphasize this, mobilization of mass membership, because it is your membership that gives you power. That is where you draw your authority, your force from, and orchestrate independent funding for INC. Two, be the global voice and create respectable international visibility for the Ijaw people. Three, engage with other nationalities, our state governments, and the Nigerian central government to kickstart the process for reinventing Nigeria, ensuring self-determination for for its federating units and allowing Ijaws to breathe and prosper. 4, encourage the governments of all Ijaw occurring states to articulate and implement development plans, failing which there will be consequences. 5, collaborate with our traditional leaders and community governance structures to rethink outmoded community leadership practices in favor of running communities as virile economic models with metrics for evaluation and productivity enhancement. 6, instigates NCDMB to enforce host community content as it does Nigerian content. 7, engage and compel the Minister of Petroleum to sanitize the environmental madness of the petroleum industry in Ijaw land, which too many Ijaw-speaking ministers of petroleum have gleefully allowed unchecked. 8, work with other stakeholders to align agencies like NDDC and the Amnesty Program that have gone completely off tangent almost since their creation. 9, engage with the River State government and other stakeholders to stop the toxic black soot that is killing the state's populace, including Ijaw people, in installments and ranking Port Harcourt amongst the worst air quality cities in the world. 10, foster a proactive system of conflict resolution amongst Ijaw communities. 11, engage with all stakeholders to liberate our communities from the chronic epidemic of self-enrichment by transactional traditional leaders, community strongmen, and political overlords who serve as willing tools of external interests, political and otherwise, and mostly oil companies, to compromise community interests and unleash violence. A trend now, which in my view may well be the biggest but unstudied threat to our community's future. And 12, engineer a realization amongst our people, state governments, and kingdoms that the difference between, for example, Dubai and them is in the mind, period. So both on traditional levels and at state government levels, Dubai is just a state, one of the federating units in the United Arab Emirates. On the community level, Dubai is a kingdom. So our communities, our traditional leaders, our state governments must be able to see that the difference between Dubai and them is just in the mind. Progress can only happen through, of course, these 12 items that I've listed are merely examples. I thought it was important to paint a bit of a picture and not just, as Pastor Ijaw Ighodalo said recently, not just talk about things generally. We've got to create context, be specific sometimes in order to make impact. So I say that progress can only happen through human agency, with the grace of God, of course. The performance of whoever are elected to pilot the affairs of INC may depend on how constructive we all are in motivating them to perform, or how vigilant we are in sounding alarm signals once they derail. To that end, dialogues like this must be regular and widened. Consultation, collaboration, and checkmating must be constant. Mass awareness building must be an ongoing process. A high quality private media. Can you hear me? A high quality private media and communications ecosystem in the region is indispensable. And I recall the counterweight role played by the independent media in the US in the years of Hurricane Trump. What more can we do to achieve this? We obviously can't have all the answers in one sitting. But one thing is sure, there is work to do for every citizen. If we are not willing to do our part, then maybe we were never really serious with the whole outcry about Ijaw struggle. One last thing, we must also discard the mentality that says he is our thief leave him alone. Imagine if Israel's leaders have been the way the Ijaw leadership class of 1999 to 2021 has been. Would there still be an Israel amongst hostile and bigger Arab neighbors? Or if Singapore had rested on the excuse of its very little size, a people faced with existential challenges on so many fronts as the Ijaws owe it to themselves to maintain higher standards of discipline, productivity, innovation, and accountability, regardless if the rest of the country is ruled by a succession of Alibaba and their 40 thieves. It is the only way they would build the resilience, capacity, and competitiveness for survival and prosperity. We ask our governors and political representatives, why can't you replicate the shining successes of the Alfred Yetespiffs, Admiral Soros, Melford Okilos, Nabo Graham Douglases, and Lawrence Ekpebos in their days in government? At our traditional rulers, we wonder, why has there been no more royal audacity and history making from our creeks since after King Koko and King Jaja over a century ago? To our INC leadership aspirants, we say, bring back the days of Harold Apadrie, Denny Fiberesma, and Pa Wekeze. Congratulations in advance, and may you be held accountable for your service and trust. Apologies if I took much extra time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wills. And without taking too much of your time, could I call on Efie Bibina to come on to the discussion, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elder. I want to congratulate this group for the professional manner in which they've handled the meeting so far. It is good to come to a meeting that starts precisely on schedule, like what happened this evening. And the timing has been very good and perfect. I just want to add a few things concerning the need for a social contract. And that is the fact that we have a lot of materials to work with. I'm not going to repeat what Honorable Wills has said. We have a lot of materials to work with. What is remaining is to be able to bring these materials to life. Is to be able to get the Ijaw people to buy into these materials, you know, like the charter, the code of ethics, the ability to build a social contract between those that are led and those that are leading. And that is where the Ijaw Summit comes in. The Ijaw Summit is supposed to enable us build that relationship. And that is why we find it difficult to understand that some persons are opposed to the Ijaw Summit. The Ijaw Summit will afford us the opportunity for us to establish this relationship that we are talking about. As we round up this meeting, I want us to understand that it will have been very good and it will have been very helpful to the Ijaw nation if we had the Ijaw Summit to establish this social contract before the INC elections. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ebie. I'm quite sure that You've helped us with the time management as well. Thank you for yourself and Mr. Wills for that wonderful presentation to the audience. Now, without taking too much of a time, we are now going to move into the question and answer session because our brothers and sisters who have been waiting patiently, I know many of them are ready, ready to give to ask questions. And on that basis, I would like to introduce my co-moderator, Dr. David Olale, to take us through that session. David, it's all yours now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Am I on?
You're on, yeah.
All right, thank you. It has been a beautiful day. And ladies and gentlemen, we are very grateful for your time and for your patience. Am I on?
I think you're on. I can hear you. I don't know if other people.
We're hearing you.
Yeah,
We're
I can
hearing
hear
you.
you. Go ahead.
Okay, well, one of my screens just froze. Okay. We thank you for joining us and for the wonderful presentations we've had today. There's some comments, questions in the chat box. Our hope is that we'll take questions that have been written down, but I see there's some hands up already. So I guess I'll have to begin with the hands I'm seeing here. Please make your questions as succinct as possible. And if it's a comment, be very brief about it. We'll appreciate you. I'm calling on Ms. Ankyo Briggs.
Okay, thank you very much.
I can't hear you. So please unmute yourself, sorry. Ankyo, please unmute yourself.
Unmute yourself, we can't hear you.
We can hear you.
Can we clearly define the time limit, please?
Okay, am I good?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes,
if
for
it's
the
a
question,
comment,
sorry. For the question and answer session, we have 20 minutes. 20 minutes. So make your questions, very specific and short.
I have. Jesus, somebody is muted me again. Hello?
No, we can hear you.
Good.
We can hear you.
Okay, good. I asked the question that does the pilot group think that the Ijaw summit is against the INC, not even the election, the INC? That's one. Then my comment is this, that the need for the Ijaw summit was based on the fact that the INC, as it is today, did not live up to expectation, and hence the desire for the Ijaw summit. And therefore, my position remains that the INC belongs to Ijaw people. Ijaw people do not belong to the INC. So I would think, and I agree with my brother who just spoke, that the issue of the INC will be better addressed, and how we're going to be able to achieve all these wonderful goals that we must achieve has to be addressed at the Ijaw People Summit that is being planned. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Briggs. I'm going to call on Elder Kentebe, if he can take 2 minutes, not more than 2 minutes, to respond to this question.
Well, there was just one question there, and that is, does the pilot, the way we are constituted now, feel that the summit is opposed to the INC? Well, the pilot leadership and admin will speak for themselves. But as someone who has been following the trend, I do not think that the summit planners are against a viable and viral Ijaw National Congress. In fact, as had been stated by Ms. Briggs, if the Ijaw National Congress was in place and functioning, there would have been no need for any other Ijaw organization to be planning a summit, because that responsibility belongs solely to our umbrella body.
Thank
but
you.
the reason this took off was because that umbrella body was comatose has been comatose for the past 6 years. So I hope that's answered your question. But there's no doubt that the INC is our umbrella body, and there is no doubt that the summit planners had no intention of surging the powers of the INC. In fact, it's complementary. And I believe if we work together and put heads together, we will do something that Ijaw people will be proud of.
Thank you. His Royal Highness Ayakame, would you like to respond?
Of course.
In 1 minute.
Thank you. Thank you. Going straight, the pilot team does not believe that all Ijaw summit is against the Ijaw National Congress. We didn't believe that yesterday. We are not believing that today, and we will not believe that tomorrow. The reason being that the Ijaw project is a very big one, and it requires collaboration of all progressive-minded individuals and groups of the Ijaw nation. Even when we have a functional INC leadership in place, nothing precludes an Ijaw group to sell an idea such as all Ijaw Summit with a view to working collaboratively with the INC leadership. And so asking whether we believe that the All Ijaw Summit is against the INC, the simple answer is we don't believe that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Emmanuel Dofega, please.
Hello.
You're on.
Hello.
Question or comment?
Right. Question and a bit of a comment. First question, we never discussed security in the whole of this discussion. I don't know at the time I came in if that has been done, but nobody responded to that. It's a very crucial issue at this time. Secondly, this issue of the elections that we're running into, I think it is relatively too soon. Our implementation strategies must be set out in phases, and until we get it right, before we can go in and get a new INC in place. That is secondly. I want to commend Barrister Iniro Wills on his presentation, which actually brought stress on that social contract. That social contract itself is something that this group or whichever Ijaw group should work on, in the sense that when you see an Ijaw man, you should know what you're expecting from him and what you can give back to that Ijaw man. I think those areas must touch on our structures, our resources, and our support systems. The whole thing that is being discussed here, I could find out that we need everybody to go back to the drawing board and let this pilot team come out with a strategic phasal implementation of everything from stage 1 to rebuild the INC, because the INC has lost it all. We need to create a new INC.
Thank you, sir.
That's my stand.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dofega's question and or comment reminds me immediately concerning the statement that two things can begin from the top: a well or a grave. So it depends on what we're trying to dig up. But thank you very much. I move on straight to Chief Frank Akpanari, I'm sorry. You're on mute, sir. You're muted.
It was Boma before him, you know.
It was, yes.
Oh, I'm not seeing Boma here. My apologies.
Yeah, he was before him. But anyway,
Okay.
Yes.
Please, Mr. Frank, hold on for me.
Okay.
Boma Douglas, sir. Thank you, Mr. Temple.
Right, thank you. Yes, my name is Dr. Boma Douglas. Very good presentations we've received tonight. Two things I'd just like to mention. The first is that this is a very crucial meeting we had today, and I just wish that this had been held before the ELECO published their guidelines. Because I understand the pilot was relaunched on the 15th of March this year. So maybe that is, just the reason. Otherwise, I thought this should have been held before the ELECO published their guidelines. And I just wish that some of the members of the ELECO are here with us, because we don't want to be talking to ourselves without sending the message.
Mr. Douglas,
and finally,
there are several members of ELECO in the meeting.
Fantastic. Well, that is good. And secondly, good presentation from Professor Morrow, but I'd like to stand on a completely different ground on the fact that he had described that those who should the leaders within the INC will now be people of the age of 40 to 55. We're not discussing IYC here. So there are people who are over that, even over and above 55, who could actually deliver on the platform of INC. So those are the 2 points I'd just like to raise. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe ELECO members who are here can take one or two things from the comments that have been made. Mr. Frank, please.
Yes. My name is Reverend Frank Akpanari.
My apologies.
I thank you all for this summit. Very great. What I want to ask is that about the e-voting. I like the presentation from Mr. Crispin Toby. When there is an election, there's always a hanky-panky. People stealing in boxes and all that, and all sort of things going. On this e-voting, will it be monitoring it? Will it be extending it from Bayelsa to the diaspora and all over the world when the voting is taking place, so that everybody here, we that are in the diaspora, can be able to take part, and also to be sure that the voting will be honest, sincere, and truthful. That's the only contribution I want to make.
Thank you very much. Do we have any ELECO members who would like to respond to this question?
May I appeal that we keep them, we keep their identity private.
Okay, cool.
But I'm aware that
I'm going to respond.
I think
Zeb is willing to respond.
I'm going to respond, and I don't intend to keep my identity private. Now, the reason why we went for e-voting is to provide an opportunity for all the Ijaw eventually to be able to vote all over the world. And we are looking forward to having a situation where the candidates will appreciate that every vote matters. It is at that point where we're going to have the kind of candidates we are talking about here. We are hoping that at a point when the Ijaw nation is at home with the electronic voting, we may have to amend the INC constitution to remove delegates voting. And when we are able to do that, some of the qualities we are talking about that the aspirants should have to become candidates can be issues that will be used during campaign. So we are very optimistic that with the e-voting,
we'll get to the point where we're going to get the right candidates. Now, as for monitoring, we intend to have the system streamed live. Yesterday, we did demonstration, and a lot of you people from diaspora watched. We got contributions from the diaspora. But before the committee took a decision on which of the two software developers we should use, we had comments, and the comments were useful in the decisions of the committee. And then at the back end, Forest have been chosen, has been in this job for 7 years. They've conducted over 8 elections using e-voting, and they've experienced the various challenges. And for every time they have done this election, we have improved upon the system. And I have no doubt in my mind that the same thing will happen with the application of the e-voting to the Ijaw Nation. And most importantly, we are going to be able to have a database of all Ijaws, In that case, it becomes easier for people who are qualified and registered to vote. So we want to commend the organizers of this program, and your contributions here will be taken into consideration while we are going to do the screening between the 20th and 22nd. And we're going to do further demonstration on the 29th. We invite all of you to join. In fact, we expect to have Gary's video software, and we are going to use it. I can assure you that as the chairman of the subcommittee on publicity, e-voting, and of course, delegate registration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
As a rule, we had agreed that participants with no videos on may not be allowed to ask questions. So we ask you to turn on your videos if you have a question to put out to us. In that spirit,
Tari Aganaba is raising his hand.
I see just one hand up here.
Yeah, Bine.
Okay, Tari. Yes, Tari Aganaba. Yes. Yes, please.
Yeah.
I see you.
Thank you very much. I must say I'm very impressed by all those who spoke. And I'm really surprised that we have such great people here. And we have not been able to translate that into a group that stands for us. Just like the Igbos have groups that stand for them, Yorubas have groups that stand for them, but we've not been able to create a very strong group that actually stands for us. So I hope this will be a very good start. And there seems to be a conflation between the INC and those who run for office, political office. Are we talking about values of those people, both the INC and those who are running for office? In that case, if we are, I hope that we actually separate INC from those so that the INC people are not the same ones who are going to run for office. Because if you do, then you would not be able to adequately vet the people who are going to run for office. That's number one. Number two, the EVM. Is the EVM in relation to the INC, or is it in relation to the general voting? If it's relating to the general voting, I assume that is not run by the state, but that is run by the, federal government. In which case, how can we use the EVM in the state to run a federal government thing? And then finally, we need to certain people, if they're going to run for office, and actually question them about how they're going to, economic activities of the state, because that is where the lives of the people are going to be affected. One of them is obviously the oil industry, the agricultural industry, education, fishing, boat building, tourism. These are all areas that we can actually work on and improve on. So in trying to choose the people, we should be able to ensure that they actually look into all these things. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Lally. Dr. Lally.
Yes, please.
How much time do we have?
Timekeepers, how much time do we have?
I think you're running out of time, so
You're running out of time, so we've got 5 minutes left.
We should be rounding up.
5 minutes left.
Yes,
Yeah.
5 minutes. Yes.
There's still the way hand on.
Yes.
Bernard hand is up. Yeah.
I'll take Bernard.
Let's take the last set of hands, please.
Bernard.
Go ahead.
Yes. Good evening, everybody. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay. I just want to touch on Joel Bissina's presentation, something he said. I kind of have an alternative view, and I just wanted to just speak to that. On the Ijaw Trust Fund, I really would suggest that we leave it to have just Ijaw board members, but also to create a parallel project-driven fund that can have non-Ijaw board members that will attract donor funding. That is my take, because I think the funding is really a big issue for the INC. And also having that Ijaw Trust Fund is really very important. But also, my experience is that only Ijaws can determine what Ijaws need. And having a fund that has non-Ijaw members, despite the funding from donors, would create another bottleneck. So I would suggest that we have that fund as well as a parallel project-driven fund. That's my take. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, ma'am. So I guess with this, we should come to the end of our questions and answers. I'd like to call on Miabiye to give to wrap up and make any necessary announcements. Miabiye, please.
Miabiye, can you just give me 1 minute, please?
Okay. In difference.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
With the apologies, there is something important I'd like to bring out very clearly. When we talked about the theme for discussion on funding, was expected to be dealt on the electoral funding, the INC Electoral Committee. But the speakers somehow were more concerned about funding the INC itself. And I'd like to bring out a salient point that has been bothering me over the period. One problem we see with funding the INC Electoral Committee in the past is that when Bayelsa State government releases money, there are couriers of these funds. And they use those funds as source to induce voters. That has been a problem. Those couriers are the people that use the funds to accommodate delegates. They use those funds to provide them welfare. And in the course of providing them accommodation and welfare, they try to sell wrong message to the effect that, oh, the governor has interest in this candidate, and the governor has interest in this candidate. That is what gives life to the observation that you pays the piper, dictates the tune. Sometimes governors may not be directly involved. Is there anything wrong? We asking government of Bayelsa State to hand over those funds directly to the electoral committee instead of passing these funds through government appointees or the advisors and all that. Pass these monies directly to the electoral committee so that the electoral committee will handle those funds in a manner that can be very judicious in managing it for the interest of delegates. I just felt I should mention this. Thank you very much.
The commissioner of Ijaw Affairs is here. So I think we should give the commissioner the opportunity to speak. Honorable Commissioner, please, I'm sure you'd like to say something.
Yeah, thank you very much, organizers of this program, for the good job
in putting this meeting together. Honorable Wilkie, Dr. Whiskey, thank you for your observation. By the grace of God, there's a new order this time around.
I observed that took place some time ago. That does not mean that the government in power had any motive of such. But I can assure you that under my watch in the Ministry of Ijaw National Affairs, everything about funding for this election is being arranged and will be handed over to Eleco. Yesterday, I had a briefing session with them and read out the budget so approved for them, which includes the stipends that should be given to the delegates. Stipends of 20,000 naira. There's no secret there. That is the amount which they propose. Eleco proposed that figure as delegates' allowance for their transport and logistics. The money will be handed over to Eleco, who will disburse this money to delegates. The Minister of Ijaw and all officials of government. In fact, the Governor of Bayelsa State, His Excellency, Senator Doye Diri, has no interest in any candidate. He has said this repeatedly, and that is going to play out in this election. We have, as much as possible, tried to be neutral in the whole process. We don't have any interference whatsoever, and you will see it play out by the grace of God. Thank you very much.
Honorable Commissioner, thank you very much. It's very relieving to hear from you. And thank you that you are starting throughout the meeting. Thank you. I think we should hear from an Eleco member. Eleco, somebody from Eleco should say something.
Yeah, Chief Zeb is raising his hand. Mr.
Chairman. The meeting cannot go on and on.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to confirm what the Honorable Commissioner has said. And some of you will know me. I know some of those who are on the committee with me. I can attest to the fact that we are not people that are likely to want to compromise the system, whose integrity is tied to our own integrity. And I also want to tell you, now this is the first time we're going to do the e-voting. So we need to have a compromise to some extent between the normal former way of doing things and the new way of doing things, so that the transition will be somehow smooth. Now, some of these delegates, like we know, wouldn't have experience in the electronic platforms. And we needed them to come to Yenegua for demonstration. And we needed to have an opportunity where we can monitor the way they assess the e-voting platform. That is why we felt that for this election, we can have some the delegates in Yenegua. Now, the moment we have people like you, enlightened people, offer to become delegates, you can stay anywhere in the world in your house. So you don't need to come. So you don't need money for transport. You don't need money for hotel. Now, that is the reason we've done that. So subsequently, we are going to go to the point where just being a member registered on the voters, we're going to have voter registration model. So long as you're on that model, you automatically can vote. And you don't need to come to Bayelsa. You don't need to come anywhere to do the election. And that's why we also say it is important that we don't just complain. We're having problem of quality aspirants. If you see some of the people that have taken the forms, you start to wonder how we're going to even assess such persons. So it is important that people come forward and aspire. If you don't aspire, and we're going to have the kind of leadership that we have had in the past. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Miyabi, let me, as chairman of this occasion, round up so that you can close with the announcements. First, let me thank everybody for your gentlemanly and very ladyly behavior. The meeting has been very orderly. Secondly, I want to thank the moderators for the very intellectual and professional manner they handled it. And we have been much enlightened by the speakers and also the intervention by Eleco and the Honorable Commissioner. Now, I want to say something on where which is the only comment I have on all the presentations, on where the member of ELECO stopped. Some members of potential aspirants have tried to come to me to canvass support. And when Mrs. Abi Fumodo was speaking, I wondered, why are good candidates not presenting themselves? Because when you say candidates should be this, or when Eniro was speaking, or when Efie Bribina was speaking, candidates must be this, the qualities of candidates. The candidates that have to be, is the candidates that present themselves, that people will vote for. The quality candidates are not coming out. I can say so with all due respect to those who have taken forms at different levels. I think that it is not angels that will bring out candidates. We have to encourage our friends, our brothers and our sisters of quality to present themselves, to come out and contest for different positions assigned to them. It is the quality of the candidates that can make people that will vote to have a broad choice of who to vote for. So on that note, I would like to thank everybody. This meeting has been very enlightening. ELECO, I am shocked because even Ohaneze, when they did their election, they did not go electronic. Many of us were observers, and they did it in a stadium. Their governors, everybody physically did option A4 lined up behind our candidates. So you have gone ahead of everybody to adopt a midway electronic system. And I think it is something very commendable. And the Ijaw Nation should know. The Ijaw Nation should know what you're doing so that people have the peace of mind. Honorable Commissioner, we are so happy at what you've told us. The Ijaw Nation should know that even the stipends which the Bayelsa State government is bearing this great burden, the Ijaw Nation should know that you are not handling money. The money is, maybe ELECO should announce it, stipends were given by ELECO. So people know that there will be no interference. I think that is the fear of people, and with this kind of transparency, people should know. On that note, I thank the organizers who invited me to chair this session, the pilot group, Chief Ayakema and Co. I thank the moderators and the hosts, Miabi Kromema, and I thank all of you, and have a good night for those who are already in the night. Good night.
There is nothing much to add and nothing much to say, but to express my profound gratitude to the chairman, the conference coordinator, High Chief Ayakeme Whiskey, the moderator who has tirelessly worked with us behind the scene, Elder Roland Ekberry and Dr. Olale. I'm particularly happy to find members of the ELECO show presence here, a couple of them led by Chief Professor Zebulon Obipi, somebody of integrity since I know him while we are at UST, and the novelty that they are bringing into. I want to also recognize the presence of the Honorable Commissioner of Ijaw National Affairs, Patrick Erasmus, and of course, his colleague, the Special Advisor to the Governor on Ijaw Affairs, my elder brother and President of Ijaw Youth Council. When I was Secretary of Ijaw Youth Council, he was my president. And indeed, every other person, particularly the moderators, I am very impressed by the quality of interventions that have been given here. Ideally, I should be making summaries, but my colleague, Chief Priye Obiki, and I have taken full records of this, both in writing and in the form of video recordings. We will articulate that probably in the next 48 hours. The full outcome, the papers that were presented, we already have them, and we will articulate all of that and present a report, which the pilot will debate before it is formally released, both to CITRE and to the INEC, and of course to the Ijaw Nation, to reflect the outcome and support the dynamics that is emerging. The pilot is committed to a new dynamics. This is small, this is seed effort, and we want to continue a process of engaging not just this process, but when the leadership finally emerges, we will continue to engage that leadership. It's something that we are committed to doing at the back end. We want to also particularly thank His Royal Majesty, the chairman of CITRE, who we engaged with and graciously permitted that all of this be done with his consent and approval, and also Professor Emeritus Dago Gofobara, who is the chairman of the ELECO, who also we had engaged extensively behind the scene and made the connections that gave credibility to all of this process. This process, like has been said, is not against consultation. It's not against stakeholders management. In fact, the pilot is founded on the idea of stakeholders management philosophy, meaning that we are not an alternative to any Ijaw organizations, whether it is INC, whether it is IYC, whether it is the women organizations. We are not alternatives to anybody. We are co-partners in the drive to do that. And we will define ourselves in the content of what we provide to Ijaw Nation, in the character of people we bring. We will continue to model the quality of leadership that we are looking for. Thank you very much. And God bless us and guide us as we retire. And hopefully we will expect you to keep an ear on what we are doing and challenge us where we are going wrong, because we want to have a listening attitude to managing stakeholders' issues in the Ijaw Nation. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, everybody, and God bless you as you move on.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Lawrence. Nice to
Good
see
night.
you.
Thank
As
you.
well.
Bye, everyone.
Douglas, everyone, thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Roland.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Well done,
Now we
everybody.
have we're gonna get a
Yes.
feedback.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Emmanuel,
How are you?
Temple.